let's set the facts straight here. And my job is to kind of lead an intervention for my colleagues. I think they need it. The Attorney General did not prosecute Donald Trump in New York. It was the result of Donald Trump's choices. Donald Trump chose to live in New York. He chose to commit his crimes in New York. He was afforded a right to be tried by his neighbors, jurors, in New York. He chose that jury in New York, working with his counsel, and they chose to make him a 34-time over convicted felon. But some of the choices the department has made in the recent years is that the president that was first appointed, that Donald Trump appointed the U.S. attorney who is investigating the current president's son. Donald Trump appointed John Durham, who investigated the wild claims made by this committee during the Russia investigation. And Donald Trump appointed Robert Hur, who was kept on by the Biden administration. Also, you have the right in our country to aid yourself in your own defense and talk to investigators. You also have a right not to. Mr. Attorney General, did Donald Trump sit down for an interview in the Mueller investigation?
I actually don't know, but I'm not going to comment on other investigations.
He didn't. Did he sit down for an interview with investigators prior to the January 6th indictment?
I'm not going to comment on it.
He didn't. He also didn't sit down for an interview with investigators in the classified materials indictment, but President Biden did sit down for a voluntary interview with Robert Hur. A jury can't hold it against Donald Trump that he did not testify in his own defense in New York, but he promised everyone else in the country that he would. You can hold it against Donald Trump that he did not testify when you consider whether you should so blindly follow every wild claim that he makes. My colleagues, none of this today that you are bringing makes sense. Your inconsistencies, your hypocrisy, your sycophancy, unless you are in a cult. And guys, I'm starting to think you're in a cult. That is your right, but it's not your responsibility. I promise you that's not what your constituents would want. So if you believe in states' rights, except when a jury in that state convicts your nominee for president, you might be in a cult. If you claim you back the blue but want to defund the police when the police go to your nominee's house to retrieve national security secrets, you might be in a cult. If you're supporting a guy whose felony convictions prevent him from getting a security clearance, you might be in a cult. And if the guy you're supporting for president has felony convictions that prevent him from going to Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Cambodia, Canada, Chile, China, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Egypt, Ethiopia, Hong Kong,
my motion
India,
takes precedent.
Indonesia, Iran, Ireland, Israel, Japan, Kenya, Macau, Malaysia, Mexico, Morocco, Nepal, New Zealand, Peru, Philippines, Singapore, South Africa, South Korea, Taiwan, Tanzania, Tunisia, Turkey, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, and the UK.
The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes. I'm asking the gentleman.
I have unanimous consent request.
The gentleman has unanimous consent request.
I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record an amicus brief by the former Attorney General Edwin Meese.
Without objection.
The question presented is whether private citizen Jack Smith lacks authority to represent the United States. I also ask unanimous consent to submit for the record an article titled, "Was it legal to appoint Jack Smith in the first place?" This is a Heritage publication.
Without objection.
I want to start by reading you the appointment clause of the Constitution. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 6 states, "The President shall nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States, whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law." Are U.S. attorneys nominated by the President and confirmed by the Senate according to this appointments clause?
They are appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate.
Wouldn't you agree that U.S. attorneys are held to the appointments clause because they are delegated some part of the sovereign power of the United States, such as the ability to make indictments and charge individuals with crimes?
I would say that those are not the reasons why, and a court has already ruled on the question of whether special counsels are subject to the appointments clause in the Mueller case, and ruled that they were not.
Was Jack Smith nominated by President Biden or confirmed by the U.S. Senate?
Look, you're asking me about a case, again, motions filed as just
This
cited
is a simple question.
No, I'm not.
Was Jack Smith nominated by President Biden?
No, he was not.
Was he confirmed by the Senate?
No, he was not.
When was the special counsel statute passed?
There is no special counsel statute. There was an independent counsel statute that was expired.
So it expired. So what gives you the authority to appoint a special counsel? You've created an office in the U.S. government that does not exist without authorization from Congress.
There are regulations under which the Attorney General appoints special counsel. They've been in effect for 30 years, maybe longer, under both parties. The matter that you're talking about whether somebody can have an employee of the Justice Department serve as special counsel has been adjudicated.
You appealed, let me interrupt for a second, because you appealed to a regulation, a rule, whereas the Constitution says shall be established by law.
Yeah, the statutes.
Right, the statute, but you referred to a regulation, not to U.S. code.
May I answer? The regulation cites the two U.S. Code provisions that permit the Attorney General's appointment. Attorney General Barr cited to the same ones.
Are you familiar?
Even Attorney General Meese did that.
All right. Are you familiar with former Attorney General Meese's amicus brief?
No.
You're not?
I know that he's filed one because I read it in the newspapers, but otherwise I'm not familiar with it. But
well, he raises some good questions that I agree with in there. It seems like you've created an office that would require an act of Congress, yet there's not an act of Congress that authorizes that. And even if it didn't require an act of Congress, and you've already admitted it, there was no act of Congress that established this office, it would still require, according to the Constitution, a nomination by the president and confirmation by the Senate. I want to move on to January 6th. Is it accurate to say that the DOJ is on pace to arrest roughly one protester a day in 2024, nearly 3 years after the incident?
I don't know what the pace is. The job is to arrest and bring to justice people who are criminally responsible, and as they are found, they will be arrested.
Is your office preparing to drop charges against more than 340 January 6thers charged with 1512C2 and release dozens from prison on that count if the Supreme Court this month reverses how your department has used that statute against them?
We respect the Supreme Court. Whatever the court rules, we will act appropriately.
So you'll have to drop the charges if the Supreme Court says that you did that wrongfully.
I'm not going to answer hypotheticals. We'll wait and see what the Supreme Court says.
What do you say in response to D.C. Appellate Court overturning 2 excessive sentencing requests sought by your office?
I say that is the United States system of justice working. If people think that they have inappropriate sentences, they can appeal their sentences. That's the way our system works, and we respect the results.
So you've refused to answer questions before us, including my questions about January 6th on multiple occasions here in this committee, but the Inspector General is preparing a report. Are you in receipt of that report yet? He's promised to examine the role and activity of DOJ and its components in preparing for and responding to the events at the U.S. Capitol. Are you in receipt of that?
I'm not in receipt of any report. You'll have to ask the Inspector General.
Isn't it true that it will go to you before it's released for review?
I don't know about it will not go to me for review. The Inspector General is independent. I hope to see it before, but that's up to the Inspector General. Let me just remind you, I was not the Attorney General on January 6th.
Do we have your commitment to release that as soon as you see it?
The determination of the release of Inspector General reports is up to the Inspector General. We give them independence. Congress demands that we give them independence.
My time has expired, but we have your commitment not to slow down the release of that from the Inspector General.
Our Inspector General is a very independent person. There's no way I could stop him from doing what the law requires.
I yield back.
And I would certainly never do that.